This map of Europe from several centuries ago shows Britain as a small anomaly, physically detached from the mainland. Look closely at the continent. To the south and east sat sprawling military powers with massive land armies. By geography alone, the island held distinct disadvantages. Yet over the following centuries, this specific island would govern hundreds of millions of people across every habitable continent on Earth. This animated diagram tracks British territory at its absolute peak. The famous claim that the sun never set on the British Empire was a geographic reality. At any hour of the day, daylight struck British soil somewhere on the planet. To see how a disconnected island transcended its physical limits, we have to look away from the land and toward the sea. History's dominant powers usually expanded by marching armies across neighboring borders. Britain expanded across the water. The ocean ceased to be a defensive moat and became an open highway. Ships function as instruments of state power, and maritime trade fueled a self-sustaining engine of wealth. The Royal Navy executed a highly effective dual mandate. It secured commercial shipping lanes from piracy and rival nations, while projecting overwhelming military force at an extreme distance. Scattered trading posts evolved into fortified colonial ports. Each new acquisition interlocked with the last, steadily forming an active global logistical network. Mastering maritime trade allowed the British state to project political and economic gravity far beyond the physical footprint of its home island. At the center of this maritime network sat India. Its enormous population, massive resource output, and prime location made it the indispensable core of the imperial system. British engineers carved immense physical and economic infrastructure directly into the subcontinent, laying thousands of miles of railway to extract resources and integrate local markets. That industrial development arrived strictly on the terms of the colonizer. It required the explicit loss of local sovereignty, replacing regional authority with foreign domination and rigorous economic extraction. British administrators dismantled existing political structures and rewired social hierarchies entirely to serve the administrative needs of London. India embodies the deep paradox of imperial rule. It generated staggering wealth for the British Crown, while leaving a lasting legacy of exploitation and generational trauma for the governed. By the 19th century, the scale of the system was immense. The state governed interconnected territories across North America, Africa, Asia, and the Pacific. London operated as the undisputed financial hub of the world, fueled by massive commercial momentum and a steady influx of global capital. Generations of British citizens grew entirely accustomed to this dominance. To those living at the imperial center, their power appeared permanent and secure. But historical patterns suggest a specific vulnerability. The moment an empire achieves its maximum territorial footprint is precisely when its massive size begins to fracture its foundations. Maintaining this massive system required vast sums of capital and continuous military deployments. Eventually, the administrative cost of holding the empire began to outpace the wealth it produced. Simultaneously, organized resistance accelerated. Across the globe, nationalist movements mobilized, making calls for self-government increasingly difficult to suppress. The First World War rapidly accelerated this strain. The conflict demanded an enormous human and financial toll, draining the specific resources required to police global territories. 2 decades later, the Second World War shattered what remained of the state's financial capabilities. Even in military victory, the imperial center itself was physically and economically exhausted. These global conflicts destroyed the international economic conditions that made governing a worldwide empire possible. The unwinding occurred gradually. Over several decades, individual territories successfully navigated paths to independence, reclaiming their sovereignty. But the invisible architecture of British rule remained. Exported parliamentary systems and legal frameworks continued to operate within many newly independent nations. The English language maintained its grip as a global standard, while established commercial routes continued to dictate the flow of international trade. Modern debates remain sharply divided over this legacy. Questions of economic inequality, issues of cultural erasure, and the deep scars of colonialism are actively contested today. The physical borders of the British Empire have vanished from the map. But the complex, interconnected world it engineered is the one we currently live in. While Britain expanded slowly over oceans through commerce and naval engineering, another empire rose entirely through raw speed and overland conquest. Forged by warriors from the Central Asian steppes, it would become the largest contiguous land empire in human history, the Mongol Empire.